Program Welcome webinar. I'd like to highlight a couple housekeeping items for you in Microsoft Teams. The features available to you can be found at the bottom, or at the top of your screen. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A pod located once again at the top of the screen. We recognize with Microsoft Teams, some people may not have access, but the chat is available. So if you do not see the Q&A pod, please use the chat pod when asking questions. But once again, we hope you're able to see the Q&A pod and type in the questions there. Federal staff will be standing by and go over the questions after the presentation today. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope that you find this webinar incredibly helpful. Now I'd like to turn things over to Cynthia Phillips. Cynthia?
Thanks, Carl. Hi, everybody, and congratulations for being awarded a new Addiction Medicine Fellowship Grant. It goes from fiscal year 2025, so you were just awarded, to fiscal year 2030. As you likely know, it's a very competitive process, which means your applications were amazing, and we're so excited to work with you all. I'm Cindy Phillips, the Director of Behavioral Health Workforce Initiatives within the Bureau of Health Workforce, HRSA. I've been with Behavioral Health Workforce Program since January 2025, so very new to this role. And the Addiction Medicine Fellowship Program just moved to our team very recently. So I'm also learning all about the work that you all do. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am that I'm leading the Behavioral Health Workforce Initiatives. The goal to expand the mental health and substance abuse workforce to address the shortage despite the increasing demand, particularly in rural and underserved communities. I'm a social worker by training, so even though it was a very long time ago, I remember my training at the University of Minnesota School of Social Work, and I also received a master's in public health. And I will say that my social work field placement were some of the pivotal moments in my career. I trained in a community health center in an underserved community in Minneapolis with a large urban American Indian population. I was a medical social worker and a parenting group facilitator for pregnant and parenting teens. In fact, as is the ideal, my field placement turned into a full-time job following graduation. I've been at HRSA since 2010, so 15 years. I've worked in various leadership roles within the Community Health Center program, with health professions programs mainly related to public health and interdisciplinary education. I spent the last 10 years before coming to BHW at the Maternal and Child Health Bureau, working on early childhood health, development, and well-being. And throughout all of my career, a resonating theme is that there aren't enough providers, mental health providers, to serve the populations that are at greatest need. So for those of you who don't know, AMF is a relatively new program. HRSA first funded addiction medicine fellowships starting in 2020. That first grant provided approximately $23 million per year to 40 programs, and that, as you know, just ended at the end of June. And the National Center for Health Workforce Analysis did an evaluation of the program back in 2023 that showed that HRSA provided support to train 60% of all addiction medicine specialists trained in the country. While some programs in the early days of AMF struggled with recruitment, particularly during the pandemic, we have seen an interest in the specialty increase significantly over the 5 years of the grant. And we saw how the presence of AMF programs not only allowed for the direct provision of high quality substance use disorder care, but these programs taught the rest of the medical profession and their communities that substance use disorders can be treated and that treatment works. In the last academic year that we have data, 2023 and 2024, the program provided funding to train 159 fellows. Now here we are, the fiscal year 2025 grant, which you've all been awarded, seeks to continue to support AMF programs. We have 44 programs with $23 million of funding. Can you move to the next slide? On our agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about the cohort, some of the key demographics. We're going to go over program requirements and deliverables, talk about some next steps as you're entering this next cohort, and then have plenty of time for questions and answers. Next slide. First, I'm going to introduce the key AMF staff. So we have Sarah O'Donnell, who is the branch chief for behavioral health programs. We have Isabel Gorgoroso, who's the team lead for professional programs. And move to the next slide. And then you have our amazing project officers, Peter McPherson and Cynthia Gibson, who you'll meet in just a second. I think many of you have met them individually on your onboarding calls. They're going to be your best resource for questions about reporting, managing a federal grant, performance measure process, and so many other items that come up. We also are going to have a technical assistance provider that's responsible for helping with many facets of your grant, from performance measures to recruitment and retention of students to networking and learning opportunities. We'll be able to announce that provider in early September, so please stay tuned. And before I turn it over to Peter and Cynthia, I want to take a moment to acknowledge your amazing PO over the last 3 years, Tony Schloff. This program is his baby, and he has really grown AMF into what it is now with your help and your support. Please join me in thanking Tony for his dedication and his persistence. I'm going to turn it over to Tony as he wants to say a few words. Tony?
Is my sound working yet? Great. Well, so I'm yesterday's news, so I won't take too much time. But I did want to congratulate you all and tell you, again, how important this program is, not just to me, not just to you, but really to the nation. You have all been doing amazing work, and we're really thrilled that we can continue working on this. I may well have been gone already, but I did want to stay around long enough to see the new grant launched and all of you get started. So again, it's really been a pleasure working with you. I'm around for 3 more weeks, and then I'm retiring. Although I still hope to have a voice in health policy, so maybe you'll see me around in other venues. Again, all my best, congratulations. And I'm either turning it back to Cynthia or perhaps over to Peter. Turning over to Peter to.
Thanks so much, Tony.
Peter, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. Technology will be the end of us all. Again, first I just want to say thank you, Tony, for being such a pivotal force in the AMF program. I think I could speak for the entire team when I say, we're really going to be sad to see him go, but we're really excited for his next steps. On a personal note, I think I've met with many of you already in our one-on-one calls, but I just want to say it's been a pleasure meeting you all, and I look forward to getting to know everybody over the next couple of years. Our team also wanted to remind you of your grants management specialist, whose also name is Tony. You'll see his contact information on your notice of award. But if you have any budgetary or grants management related questions, please feel free to reach out to him and make sure you CC your project officer as well. And again, you can find his contact information on the notice of award. And just from our entire team, we're really looking forward to working with you all. We hope that you can view Cynthia and myself as a resource, as your advocates. If you have any questions, reach out to us anytime, whether that be calling or emailing. But yeah, if you could hit the next slide, please. we have some polling for you guys.
Right. So like Cindy mentioned, my name's Isabel, and I'm going to be asking the group, where are you joining us from today? So if you want to whip out your phones, it's a QR code right there on the screen. It'll pull up the link for you to chime in where you are coming or calling in from. And we are going to take a look and see where everyone is calling in from. So give me 1 second, and I'm going to switch over to another website.
I'm also putting the link in the chat if you guys want to try to do it that way as well. So thank you for your patience.
Wow. Okay. So as you can see, we have a lot of different places representing today. We have Boston, Los Angeles, Memphis, Portland is right in the middle, a number of you from Portland. So thank you so much for letting us know where you guys are all calling in from. And I will hand it back over to Peter.
Yeah, again, thank you everyone for responding. It's really great seeing where you guys are all from. I think it really helps mirror the diversity of this year's cohort. And talking a little bit more about that, actually, next slide, please. Just to kind of get you a better idea of also where we all are. So we have awardees from 25 different states, including 1 U.S. territory. Shout out to Puerto Rico. The furthest away, I think, is about Seattle, and the closest is actually right here in Maryland, which is wonderful. You all represent a range of different settings, from large urban centers like New York City to small cities like Springfield, Illinois. We actually have a number of states that have multiple awardees, which is wonderful. So California with 7 awardees, Pennsylvania with 4, Massachusetts with 3. We also have a couple states that have, I think, 2 as well. And we're really excited to be working with you all. We have programs also that are both addiction medicine and addiction psychiatry, serving different underserved populations. And this really shows a strong, diverse cohort, both geographically as well as programmatically. Next slide, please. I think we have 2 more polls for you all.
All right, so the next one is, we want to know about your experience with HRSA grants. So again, use your phone, open up the link, and let us know what your experience has been. I'm going to hop back over. And so you should see the questions there. Again, the QR code is in the left corner. Looks like we have a lot of previous AMF grant recipients. That's excellent. We like veterans. We also like brand new award recipients as well. So I'm brand new to HRSA grants. I have had a HRSA grant, but not AMF. So we have a little bit of we have someone in every category, but the majority are re-awarded. So congrats to everybody. And then our next and final question is, in one word, what are you hoping to accomplish with your grant? Sustainability, retention, access. Expansion and sustainability are competing for top 1 words. Those are great. Workforce impact, success, training. Well, we are too, and we're really we have a team here that's really available to help you meet your programmatic goals. And so I'll hand it back over to Peter to continue with the rest of the slide.
Thank you, Isabel. And again, I'm so happy to see so many returning, organizations and awardees. For the new awardees who never had a HRSA grant before, never had an AMF award before. Again, please make sure that you know that your project officers are resources, so reach out to them if you have any questions. Another really key place to go if you're new to EHB, for example, also would be EHB knowledge base. So we'll talk about more about resources later as well. So you'll see the legislative authority. So the program is authorized under Section 760A1 of the Public Health Service Act, which enables us to support strengthening the addiction treatment workforce. As program directors, it won't really impact you, but just something important to know. Next slide, please. So just want to give you a little brief overview of the program. So first, the program's goal is to increase the number of board-certified addiction specialists in addiction medicine and psychiatry to serve in medically underserved communities once trained. The project runs from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2030. And we have awarded 44 programs, which is more than what we originally expected. For those of you who are aware, who probably saw the NOFO, initially we anticipated around 28 awardees. Based on a full $800,000 per program, but of course, many of the programs request less than that. And so, given that there's supporting fewer fellows, we actually had more money to give to other programs, so we have the 44, which is great. So for a year one, we're anticipating about over 100 fellows to be trained. We understand that many of the programs received award notices after the usual matching cycle, and so many programs weren't able to recruit up to their full complement of fellows for year one, which again, completely understandable. If you haven't already, make sure you're having conversations with your project officer about next steps and plans to catch up on training numbers. And we can just figure out how that will work. And then finally, of course, total funding is $23.1 million for this year. Next slide, please. I'm just highlighting the key program objectives. So I'll be highlighting some high level, what the goals of the program. There aren't exact NOFO wording, so just make sure, you look through the actual NOFO, but just to kind of capture the core aims. So first, the program focuses on training addiction medicine fellows to work in a variety of different settings, so especially underserved and rural communities, with the hope of fellows continuing to work in these areas after their fellowship. Especially within the context of pushing for more training in rural settings, the intent is to reach more underserved populations by meeting people where they are and expanding access to care. The program also recognizes the constantly evolving legal and social landscape. So a key objective of the program focuses on supporting training which strengthens fellows' ability to connect with patients with relevant legal and social support systems, which is something crucial for providing comprehensive care. And finally, the program supports the growth of addiction medicine as a recognized subspecialty, of course. This includes a focus on reducing stigma as well, which is important in this field, and encouraging more physicians to enter and stay in this workforce. Next slide, please. So to accomplish program objectives, we have a variety of different program requirements, things you're required to do during the course of the program. This is a general summary. You'll notice there's a lot of different program requirements that are on the NOFO that are not listed here. So please, please, please refer to the NOFO for the full list. I'm really just going to kind of go over more of the key points, things you might want to be made aware of if you aren't already. So first, programs must provide clinical rotations in medically underserved settings, including rural areas. I think that last part's the most important. A new 2025 AMF program requirement, especially for those who are awarded in 2020 and 2025, requires all programs to have rural training site rotations for their fellows. We recognize that for many programs, especially those in urban settings, adding a rural site can be a big undertaking. This rural experience can range anywhere from 2 weeks for the entire fellowship. We're not mandating any certain type of length. We do allow telemedicine, so if that's something that allows your rural sites to be something that can happen more, we allow that. Of course, we encourage and strongly encourage, actually, in fact, your fellows to have real-world experience in these settings. But recognizing the difficulties that some urban areas might have with this, we do have that flexibility. And also, that many programs also use grant funds to support travel to rural sites, or even, for example, I know a couple of programs use a housing allowance for their fellows, and that way this helps support travel to and living in rural areas for a little bit. So that's something you explore as well. All programs must also include interprofessional or interdisciplinary team training. So this includes training connected to legal aid or medical legal partnership programs, whether through partnerships with local judicial systems, nonprofits, or other community organizations. This program requirement, we have another program requirement, of course. This probably many of you all were already doing, but just to put it out there more in words, ensuring that your program places both fellows and medical residents together to help encourage more teaching opportunities and help expose more residents to addiction medicine, as a potential subspecialty, and, kind of tied to trying to grow the field more. And finally, another new requirement is providing training on stigma reduction for fellows, residents in the broader community. Again, some of your programs are probably already doing this to begin with, but of course, it's an essential part of supporting addiction medicine and improving care. One somewhat unrelated note, as you know, stipends are a core part of the AMF program. You might have noticed in your notice of awards, under the terms, it lists the maximum stipend amount currently at $100,000 per year. Just to clarify, the NOFA originally said $110,000 per year. So if you saw the $100,000, in your notice of award and you got a little bit scared, it's fine. Please continue providing the stipends that we originally were anticipating to provide. That's more than fine. This, again, will really only affect people who are trying to give more than $100,000 in stipends per year, and we're worried about it. But again, if you have any questions or concerns, just reach out to your project officer and we can clarify for that. And our team will work to try to adjust this more so that your notice of awards reflect the actual amount properly. Next slide, please. So just before diving into reporting requirements, a quick note for current awardees who received the AMF 2020 award and are in the process of closing out or managing no-cost extension. So this does not apply to programs who are only awarded the 2025 award. You're probably getting a lot of different reports in EHB at the moment. If you're at all confused at the different reports and you want to make sure you understand what you're looking at properly, just reach out to your project officer and we can help provide a bit more clarity. But just want to put that out there just in case all the different reporting was kind of getting a little jumbled. But that said, let's start talking about reporting for this award. So the first one you probably know about is your quarterly progress updates. This is something that is new compared to AMF 2020. These are more frequent reports, as the name would suggest. So every 90 days, you'll have a report due. So for example, our first quarter ends September 30th. And so the day after that, you'll see an EHB a generated report called a quarterly progress update, and you'll submit status updates on those. And these quarterly progress updates are more to just track progress on different goals and milestone activities. These updates kind of complement your recurring bi-monthly one-on-ones you should be having with your project officer and help provide more of a support throughout the year. These could be used or generated off of what you submitted in your standardized work plan, which we'll talk about in a second. And we cannot emphasize enough to make sure you submit a proper SWP with revisions. This will help hopefully reduce some of the back end for programs and staff and allow us to make better use of our time during our one-on-one so we can talk about the important issues to programs. The next report is your non-competing continuation report or NCC report. It's the big qualitative report every year. Some of you might be familiar with. It's typically due around March. Usually a webinar is offered to support completing this. It usually will ask something about how you were taking steps to address the goals you put in your application, have you spent that money so far, if there's staffing changes, things of that nature. But again, program will provide more information on what that'll look like and what's required closer to the deadline. The last one is our annual performance report, which is really the biggest report that you'll have to fill out. It's our big quantitative report that's due July 31st, each year. Many of you are probably familiar with this. You might have just submitted it recently, of course, this year, actually, in fact, and are talking with your project officer back and forth and making sure the changes, any changes are completed. We strongly recommend, if you're trying to see what type of data you should be collecting for this program, that you review the report in your grant link in EHB. And that's really will be have the most recent APR manual, which will kind of show what data we're looking for, so to help you give a better idea of what you should be collecting. Of course, like with all data, it's really important to start thinking about that now, early, before it actually comes up. That way you know what to collect and you're not surprised about anything that we're asking for come June next year. There are other reporting requirements you'll see mentioned, like a federal financial report, which your grants management specialist might provide more information on. There's some stuff about closing out, but again, those are information that we'll provide closer to the date. Next slide, please. This next slide kind of just highlights the key data you'll need to collect on your annual performance report, just really talking more, again, like I was saying earlier, about what data you should be collecting now, or at least thinking about now. Again, for full details, please look at the latest AMF reporting manual. There's a link at the bottom. I believe we said this already, but the slides and the recording will be shared afterwards, so you should be able to have access to that later. The most important, of course, will be your fellow or demographic data. And so, who are the fellows that you're training? What is their backgrounds? How many hours and patient encounters they have, including like how many training in the different training settings, for example, how many hours in rural rotations, telemedicine, primary care, etc. A quick note on patient encounters. Make sure you track individual data and not just cohort-wide. So if you have 5 fellows and, for example, you have, say, 200 encounters in a year, you don't just split it up evenly among all your fellows. Like, really try to get individual data. That's important. Something else to keep note of, and this has been something that I know some programs were surprised about before, so just so you know now, we are asking programs to keep track of non-AMF funded fellows. What I mean by that is fellows who have benefited from our curricula that was HRSA funded, or training sites that were developed from our programs. We want to make sure we capture and collect that types of information as well. Another thing also to think about is keeping track of interprofessional trainees. So as on the topic of training sites, of course, you want to be collecting training site data, what type of trainings, where are they? But another key thing also, outside of the number of trainees, AMF funded trainings in those sites, is the number of interprofessional trainees, right? So a huge part of the program is an emphasis on interprofessional training, right? And so if you have 2 social workers to work with a fellow, we want to be able to capture that information in our annual performance report. So just something to make sure you keep in mind of. And then finally, of course, we have the course development and delivery, which is pretty self-explanatory. Just, reporting the attendee numbers, what type of discipline they are, what type of courses they were, how they were delivered, like in person, hybrid, etc. Or like maybe the topic areas, such as medical legal partnerships, which is a program requirement, things of that nature. And then just one last thing on the AMF reporting manual. It does change every year. So what you will see now is the most recent one for the APR that was due in 2025. Next year's manual will look a little different, most likely, but most of the core information will stay the same. So if you're really trying to get a good idea of what the program will look like and what data we're looking for, it'll give you a pretty good image and what you need to look for. Next slide, please. So our reference guide, we have one. You probably have seen it in our welcome email that we sent you. I want to say middle of July, about somewhere around then. In that welcome email, we introduced ourselves. We had a form you guys submitted, but also we had this guide. It's kind of like an onboarding packet, as well as some standardized work plans guidance, which we'll talk about in a second. It really is supposed to serve as a key onboarding resource. So this should be your first stop before reaching out to your product officer with questions. It includes a wide range of useful information and context to help you navigate the program more smoothly. So some highlights from the guide. There's an EHB help desk number in case you run into technical issues. Something to keep in mind is that your product officer can't really help with a lot of technical issues. They don't really see what you're seeing, so your first stop should be the help desk. If you do run into more issues, you can ask your PO to get involved to help escalate an issue, but it really should be the help desk. Another note as it relates to EHB, our office does want to acknowledge that HRSA is in the process of transitioning to Grant Solutions, which some of you might be familiar with as a different software that other agencies use. For the time being, it will not impact you. You can still reach out to EHB if you have any technical issues. We'll keep you updated as this transition kind of starts to impact you and keep you in the loop. But for now, you don't need to worry about that. There's also data about information on how to submit common prior approval requests. Say you want to do a rebudget, you want to change around your budget like compared to what you originally anticipating, or maybe you want to add, maybe your project director is changing, you submit a key personnel change. That's something else to consider. A copy of the full program requirements is in there as well. Some data reporting, kind of what I just talked about earlier about what we're looking for. Links to additional resources that you might find useful, or your fellows will find useful. And then just, one important reminder that isn't on this or in the reference guide, but if you reach out to your product officer or your grants management specialist with a question, please include the grant number of your program. We're getting used to our programs and learning everyone. But we don't have everyone's names and emails memorized yet, of course, and we can do some searching, but it saves us a bit of time if you just include it in the subject line or somewhere in the email, just so we know that, and helps us respond more quickly and accurately. Next slide, please. So by now, you likely have seen us talk a lot about revisions or standardized work plan. And of course, you all submitted yours in your original application. So as a reminder, your standardized work plan drives quarterly progress updates, which auto-generate in EHB. And so they'll ask you report on different milestone activities each quarter. And so when working on your revisions, the first thing I'd really recommend is you review the standardized work plan guidance that was sent in your initial email. So that's the kind of that picture you might be able to see on the right, which is like one thing within that guidance. But the standardized work plan guidance includes some general guidance about what is the standardized work plan, what are quarterly progress updates. It includes some tips and tricks, as well as a template, which you see on the right, to help standardize submissions a bit more. Important thing to remind you all, the goal and objectives in the standardized work plan must match what is provided in the guidance. So make sure you look through that guidance very carefully. Just some more context, we asked all awardees to submit a revised standardized work plan. So that's not necessarily due to the quality of your submission, but more so because there was a huge variety in the submitted work plans. And so we just wanted to kind of standardize them a bit more to help track them a little bit better. We also wanted to ensure certain core program requirements are more accurately reflected in the standardized work plan. And we also want to make sure that, your QPUs generate more easily and we're able to more accurately look through them and support you all. And like I said, this is something we're asking all awardees to do. So it's not just some programs and not others. Another key thing to point out, we added a fourth objective. So, this kind of captures some important program requirements that didn't quite fit neatly under the other program objectives. One advice I would say is just to review when you pull up and start working standardized work plan, kind of have another screen up with the template and just kind of review the bullet points listed on the template and make sure your milestones align accordingly. We are not, emphasis on not asking you to rewrite your standardized work plan from scratch. If your original work plan kind of aligns with what we're already asking for, and it's really close to the template, that's completely fine. Just make some small adjustments and then resubmit it. If you want some feedback on yours before you submit it, you can reach out to your project officer as well. We can provide you some guidance. And if important also is if you haven't yet, reach out to your project director, They must be registered in EHB to access and submit the standardized work plan. So some of you might not have seen it yet in EHB. So you might want to, you'll be able to see information on how to do that in the AMF reference guide. I'll also provide that actually in the next slide as well. But yeah, this is a critical step. Programs will need to complete this. Another really important thing is if you want to make sure that other people on your team have access to EHB, this is also important. And then just due date. So you'll see it is due. We're saying it's due September 5th. You will see in EHB a due date of August 15th. So don't be alarmed. That doesn't mean it's due in 4 days. It's a soft deadline. So if you need to, please, you can submit it up to September 5th. With that said, please do not submit it any later than September 5th. We need sufficient time on the product officer team to make sure we have time to review it and potentially return it back to you to make some changes. If you submit it too late, we'll have some issues where your reporting is going to start getting messed up. So really, really, really try to get it in by September 5th. Next slide, please. So this is something I was talking about earlier about registering as project director. Most of you all have done this already. I'm pretty positive, but just in case, some of the quick steps. So, go to grants.gov, grants.hrsa.gov, log in using the application grantee account. Once logged in, make sure you click on the grants at the top right and add grant to portfolio. It'll request, if you're requesting access to registering as the PD, you'll want to register as the PD, of course. And then you'll see a bunch of different options for grants, and you have to pick the one that you want to register for. It might take some time. So when you do that, your standardized work plan task should generate an EHB, but it could take a little bit of time. So it could take anywhere from 48 hours to 72 hours. So just be cognizant of that. If it takes longer than that, reach out to your project officer or EHB support, and we'll figure out what's going on because we want to make sure you have access to this. That's not to say, of course, you can't start working your standardized work plan ahead of time. But of course, the portal where you actually do the edits is going to be on EHB. And then on the bottom, you'll kind of see what it should look like once you have the task. I hope everyone's able to see that for the most part. It'll be just titled standardized work plan. It'll be a tracking number that starts with SWP. And again, it says due August 15th, but it is not due on August 15th. It is due September 5th. Next slide, please. This is just a brief disclaimer. So when producing any products created by HRSA funds, federal awardees are required to use this language when issuing statements, press releases, requests for proposals, bid solicitations, things of that nature. When describing products or programs funded in whole or even in part with HRSA funding. So including like websites, things of that. So like if there's something that was supported from the program that was one of the curriculum that you use HRSA funds for, make sure you use this disclaimer. Examples of HRSA supported publications include but are not limited to manuals, toolkits, resource guides, case studies, and issues briefs. But again, just something to keep in mind as you start working and producing work under your grant. Next slide, please. So what's next? So we just throw a lot at you. There is 4 main things you want to keep in mind of. First, and most importantly, you want to make sure you address all conditions on your award. So you will notice there should be a task in EHB similar to your standardized work plan that will have you that you need to respond to and submit to address your condition. If you do not see if you look at your notice of award and it says a condition and there's not a condition associated in EHB, make sure you reach out to your project officer because there should be. So I would recommend, on top of looking at EHB, just to read through your notice of award if you haven't already, to see if there's any conditions or terms on there that you need to address. As a reminder, all conditions are due September 15th. That was extended. I think originally it was like in August, but you do have some more time on that as well. And a reminder that your standardized work plan is due September 5th. So they're two different deadlines. If you're not sure, again, just reach out to your project officer or look at your notice of award, what conditions those are. Attending bi-monthly check-in calls, pretty self-explanatory. You should have gotten an invite from your project officer for regularly scheduled bi-monthly one-on-one calls. This is just really a great way to ensure proper communication support both ways. It's also a great opportunity to flag any issues or concerns early on, especially when we're starting the program, and that's very important. Engaging with the technical assistance provider. Be sure to take advantage of the technical assistance provider we have. They're here to help with implementation. They'll have great thoughts on best practices, navigating challenges. You can submit some technical assistance. You'll be hearing more about how to connect with the TA provider and what that will entail soon. And then finally, submitting your first quarterly progress report. As I mentioned earlier, they're every 90 days. So your first quarter ends September 30th. So you'll have one generating EHB the day after that, and then it'll be due October 15th. And then just as a reminder, your standardized work plan drives what shows up in your QPU, like I was mentioning earlier. So just make sure you put some careful thought into when you're submitting your revisions. Next slide, please. And then here's just, a list of a multitude of different resources you have available to support you throughout the life cycle of your award, from onboarding to reporting to closeout. Again, we'll be sharing these slides after the session, so you'll be able to click on the hyperlinks to explore everything at your own pace. First up, of course, is the EHB knowledge base, which I think I mentioned earlier, but just a really great resource that has a bunch of different like how-to documents, a couple great videos for those who aren't familiar to EHB, or just want a refresher, of course. It includes walkthroughs and things of that nature. There's the EHB help desk, which I keep referring to. If you have any issues whatsoever, technical assistance wise, reach out to them, or excuse me, any tech issues, reach out to EHB support. Their phone number and email are listed here. Again, your project officer will not be able to help you resolve EHB tech issues, so it's really best if you go directly to the help desk. HRSA also has some general guidance on managing your grant, as well as some helpful healthy grants workshops you can explore on your own time. As we mentioned earlier, also we're transitioning to grant solutions, so you'll see a link there for how to access certain stuff. But again, it really won't be relevant for you for a little bit. For your fellows or trainees, the Health Workforce Connector might be a valuable resource they find. It helps connect health professionals to training and job opportunities, including underserved areas. Include here also is a link to your payment management system resources and the HHS grants policy statement, which is a helpful reference for federal grant rules and cost principles. And most importantly, of course, if all that fails, and please feel free to reach out to your project officer at any time. Like I said, Cynthia and I are here for you. If you have any questions or need support. But yeah, as we wrap up the webinar portion of the meeting and transition to the Q&A, I just want to say again, the AMF team is really excited working with you all and getting to know all your programs and seeing what you accomplished this year. Next slide, please. Oh, there's one more thing. HRSA is on social media. We have 5 different social medias, I believe. All the handles end in @HRSA.gov. We also have a YouTube page, which is news to me. So that might be interesting for you. And we also have e-news, so newsletters if you're interested in that as well. I think if you click on that link, you should be able to navigate to that. But I think that's it. Next slide. And I'll hand it over to Tony for questions. Thank you, guys.
Back to me. So I just had only a few questions. I'll try to keep my eye out for more. Was asked about whether the new requirements mean that the reports will change. And the annual performance report is really a report that goes across programs in the Bureau of Health Workforce. So those questions are fairly generic, but demographics of trainees, about the kinds of sites that training is happening in. So they're not specific to the AMF requirements at all. The NCC report in March will ask you for some comments about your objectives and how you're meeting them, but will not go deeply into questions about requirements. The SWP, where you're generating your own sub-objectives, there we have asked that you write some of your sub-objectives and milestones specific to program requirements. So there, you'll write them, and then in your quarterly progress report, you'll have a chance to respond to them. Was asked about folks on various kinds of visas and whether they can get HRSA funding. You can bring fellows into your program on such visas, but you cannot give them direct stipend support unless they have some form of permanent status in the United States. This is not a HRSA role. This is by statute, so it's not something we can change. The last question I had, I have to remind myself what it was about.
Just asking about the fourth objective.
The fourth objective, right? You should all have gotten an SWP guidance document when you got the resource guide. That was in mid-July. If you have trouble locating it, you can ask your project officer, and I'm sure they'll be happy to send it to you one more time if you need it. And that has the fourth objective, as well as our requests for specific sub-objectives related to program requirements. And I think that's all the questions that I have read. Bruce, I think I turn it back. I think I turn it back to you.
Second. You mean you have your sound muted? Sorry, guys, technical issues. Yeah, is there anyone else who has any questions or comments or things that they'd like us to address? And again, this is not to say that you can't ask anything at any point to your project officers.
Due dates.
Yes. Okay. So, Dr. Johnson, yes, there most definitely is. If you go onto your onboarding packet, or it'll be called your grants or your reference guide, there is an entire like 2 or 3 pages that basically has this huge deliverables calendar that shows what date everything is due, separated by the year, that you kind of like help you to visualize more when everything is due in the system. EHP will also have the due dates of the stuff there as well, but they don't always show up until closer to the deadline. So I would recommend you look at the onboarding packet or the reference guide, excuse me, that has like that calendar of different due dates. And then there's another question. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, a question about the how the SWP appears in the EHB. So when you open it, it can be a little bit tricky because it will show, well, first of all, remember the NOFO has 1 goal and 3 objectives. And when you're writing your own SWP, don't be careful not to move categories. It's 3 objectives. So if you write those objectives as goals, then nothing that follows will make sense and it will not generate properly in the quarterly report. So the 3 objectives are all there, but when you first open it up, you might just see the 1 goal, you click on the goal, and you'll see 1 objective at a time. Without having your SWP in front of me, I can't quite point it out to you, but if you click down, you can open each objective 1 at a time. And that's where you can then edit the details, add the sub-objectives and the milestones. If you're in that spot and you're really stuck, that's when you can do a screen share with one of us and we can sort of show you where to find it.
Great. Thank you again, Tony. Any other questions or concerns or comments? And a reminder for standardized work plan, product officer resources. So if you would like, you can submit, like if you want to send us like a draft for us to look over ahead of time, if you want to talk through something with us, if you want to like have a call and we can look through it together, that's also something that we can explore as well. Yes, you do want to add a 4th objective to your SWP. So you should, when the SWP you submit that's revised, should have 4 standardized work plans. And then you also want to make sure, like I was saying earlier, you want to really check the template that we sent and that SWP guidance, and make sure that all the different bullets that were in that template are also addressed in your standardized work plan. And we'll give it a couple more minutes in case anyone else have any more questions. Do you need our names in the chat for attendance? No, we are able to track attendance outside of that. Do appreciate everyone who did that already, just so everyone can kind of see where everyone is. But no, you do not need to put in the chat. Going once, going twice. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you all learned something today. And again, if you have any questions, just reach out to us. We should send some sort of after-action report that'll include the recording and slides. We'll probably also attach the MGAC, the standardized work plan guidance, as well as the reference guide, just so you all see that again. And yeah, if you have any questions that we didn't get around to, just send us an email. But thank you again for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.